to introduce our next two wonderful people. They are fabulous leaders, and they are the Benders. So would you please welcome up Greg and Ange Bender?
Thank you. Thanks, love.
And I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Especially you, Greg.
Especially me.
What's your favorite Christmas song?
Is it by Johnny Cash?
I don't know a Johnny Cash Christmas song.
You need some more
I don't know. I would have to say, "Come hither, ye children."
I have not heard of that.
That was your
No.
grandma's favorite song.
Yeah, it's an old German song.
That's cool.
At my grandma, I don't even know the words to it. They would always sing it in German.
Yeah, it's
And my-
super painful to sing in English, just saying, because when we hosted the family reunion, we hosted a family, not reunion, but family camp for like 150 of your family, right? And didn't we try to find this song?
Oh, we did find it.
We did find it. It was,
Yeah,
yeah.
a bunch of YouTube struggles there finding that.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
It was beautiful.
It was great.
And difficult. And
Very difficult.
Yeah. I love you.
Love you too.
I don't know
Hey,
if I
thanks for
have-
coming out tonight.
Yes.
We're glad that you're here.
Holidays are pulling people in lots of different directions, so I'm just so honored for us to have this time together. I know that the Lord always has a date with each and every one of us. Like you guys just streamed in from Chandler, right? Like, what? So cool. I just love you guys. So that's super fun. Well, I need to take a moment and, I guess we can release kids, but before we do this, I want to just tell you guys what a great guy I am married to, actually, before we release the kids. So over this weekend, Greg diagnosed and replaced the brakes on my van, taught our son how to iron. I'm not sure how effectively, but actually
He wasn't actually touching the iron yet.
But he was the process was begun.
He was so excited to learn this skill, let me tell you.
Fixed massive things around the house, and then selected a wedding card for a couple in their 70s who are getting married after having one of them fallen for each other back when they were 15 years old. And I'll have to tell you, I was pretty confident that the wedding card was a bad selection. I had cards already
It was the only one in the box. It was for weddings.
Yes.
Had a white wedding dress on it, little three-dimensional thing.
Had a white wedding dress on it. I was like, honey, they're in their 70s. I'm not really sure that the white wedding dress is really the right card. I'm not sure that
I was going for expediency here.
Right.
The problem
Okay,
can be
right.
solved
Tell
right
me
here.
that this would not be offensive to some people. Here's white wedding dress.
Okay, see.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking, man, I am ahead of the game. I'm doing
Oh.
wonderful things here. She takes one look at this card and goes, "You suck."
That is not.
This card sucks too.
That word.
Anyway,
I'm the one who always says the bad words. Who are you? So yeah, I didn't tell him that. I just said, hey, we might want to pick a different card and maybe give it to him another time. I'm just not really sure that this is going to speak to it. But here's what a genius he is. She wore a white wedding dress at the wedding. So it was the perfect card. I mean, so.
yeah. And you served really good chili afterwards.
I did serve really good chili. But isn't it funny when people surprise us? It's just fun when people surprise us. So we're going to just take a quick second before we release the kids. And I just would love to hear if anybody has something they want to share about something that God did in your life this week. Maybe something that surprised you, or just something that you feel like God's working out. So we always just take a moment and see if someone wants to share. Sometimes there's always someone right away. Christy wants to. Excellent.
I could honestly say something every week, but I hold back because you all hear my voice enough. But I just have to say, I am so amazed with the kiddos that we have here at Desert Outpouring, and it is seriously, I kind of joked about it up front, but they are amazing, and you would be amazed at the things that they do and experience and see and perceive, and they are really just rocking it, and we're starting to see some really cool breakthroughs just in their level of engagement in what they are willing to say yes to with the invitation that God gives them. So it's really cool. So continue to just be agreeing with what is happening with the kids in that space when you guys are in here, and and even outside of that, just be praying for it. And not in a needy way, but in a thankful way, because it really, really is so cool how God is working with these kids. And Jocelyn and I are just really honored and privileged that we have the opportunity to spend time each week with the kids, because it's so, so, so good. So like, you guys think it's good in here, it's 100 times better in the other room. So sorry.
Now we're pulling out the comparison card.
And it has nothing to do with us. It's all about the kids and what they are doing. And so it's really cool. So yay.
We're so blessed that one of our kids is being blessed by that, and the other youth stuff. Okay, so anyone else who would like to share what God's doing in their lives? And it doesn't have to be pretty. It can be a whole lot of. All right, we'll open it up again in a minute. All right, we will release you kids to go be awesome and amazing champions and game changers, kind and loving and beautiful and overcoming. So most of you know that we are in the middle of a series, I would say the front side of the middle of a series on Job. So we have some notebooks, and if anyone needs access to one, we basically printed out the book of Job so that you could take a look at it and reference it as we go along. I know that in the past, Job has been one of the most challenging. Oh, I'm going to stop for just a second also and just say, Jocelyn, that was a whole lot of awesome risk-taking that you did today. So I'll just tell you, Jocelyn, so we're a newer church and we're a smaller community, and Jocelyn was doing all the things that she thought she was supposed to do in worship, right? Facilitating the whole, here's what you do in worship. And I said, there isn't anything about us that's about what you're supposed to do. This is about living a life of passion and living a life of taking risks. Haven't we all done the 30, 40 years of what you're supposed to do? I mean, kind of to a certain extent. And so I said, let's just take risks. And some of them will be great and some of them will totally flop, but I would rather have a risk that totally flops than to do something, just to do the same old, same old. I can go anywhere and do the same old, same old. So that was super risky today. So way to go, kudos, congratulations. Yay, right, that's what I want to do, is take risks, let's try new things. So excellent. So as we're processing Job, hi love, hi friends. I'm so excited about what God has in store for us tonight. So I'm just going to take a moment and ask if we could just let the Lord love on us tonight. Let the Lord speak to us in ways that maybe we haven't heard before. And just set aside our expectations of what this time is supposed to be, and just say yes to anything God wants to do with us in our hearts and in our lives. And so, Lord, I ask that you make us able to say yes to your grand love affair with us. I ask, Lord, that you would move our hearts and move our minds into a space where we are able to hear you accurately and to feel you accurately, to enter into new conversation with you and passion with you. That the stuff that is great in our lives, that we hear what you have to say about that. And the stuff that is a total train wreck, that's unresolved, that is challenged, that is frustrating, that is pushing us into the places that we don't even know what to do. Lord, that we would start to hear you more clearly in those spaces. Amen. So in the beginning of Job, we discover that this beautiful book that is really an ancient document that probably none of us will really ever fully come to understand and has been hotly debated by many people for many, 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 many years, is kind of this story that kind of lays out a case. And it has a lot of legal language that we don't typically understand. And it has a lot of illustrations and a lot of imagery Often the book is written as poetry, but when you start to translate it from one place to the next, some of that poetry is lost. And so much of the imagery in here is based on an agricultural society. So when we talk about our safety nets, when we talk about how do we know that our family is safe for the future, we're looking at things like our homes, real estate, bank accounts, stock market. We're looking at politics, right? We're looking at the economy. These are the things that we look to as kind of our safety places. And these are the places that when they're disruptive, we feel super disrupted, and when they feel good and solid, we feel pretty good. But this is an agricultural society, and most of us, even though Greg, somewhat grew up in an agricultural society, none of us grew up in this kind of an agricultural society where the whole economy of all people is based on growing things and nature. So when you are in that kind of a society where all of your safety and all of your future is based on what crop is going to happen next, what's the future of this group of people and their animosity towards us, like your whole sense of safety is built on something of which you have almost little to no control and no ability to stockpile for fully. So what happens when people feel out of control? Anyone want to? What happens? What happens to you when you feel out of control? Oh, and by the way, we do this thing together. I'm the wordy person, Greg's the less wordy person, but we kind of we're a team. We do the thing that we do. Okay, what do you do, Dustin, when you're out of control?
Get afraid and then try to fight, and if I can't fight, to find peace and control, then I get angry. Okay, so we're going to put this up on the board. What happens when circumstances in your life are not favorable? So I'm going to actually right up here put I know, right? When do I ever not have the words? I'm trying to all the time. I'm going to put injustice / offense. How many of you know that there's a really big difference between an injustice and an offense? I would hope that most of us would know that, right? But how often do we confuse it? We confuse an offense with an injustice, right? We think that we are being treated unfairly, that we have been treated unjustly, when actually the truth of it is we're just offended with somebody else's choice. So that's why we got to clarify both of these things up here when that happens in our lives, an offense or injustice. Okay, and then we have choices to make. And your coping mechanism, Dustin, was to be afraid, so that's on a negative. And then what else? And then I try to fight my way to control it.
You're trying to fight your way to find a solution, okay? So fight. Okay. And if that doesn't work, you get angry. I do that too. I have a short path to anger. I mean, the Lord's, right? Okay, anger. Okay, anyone can relate to this? Okay, who else would like to add to this? What do you do when you experience an offense? Meaning, it appears that somebody else is possibly blocking what you think ought to happen in a situation. That's an offense. That's not an injustice. When somebody's blocking what you think ought to happen in a situation, that's rarely an injustice. It rarely has a moral component, but it can often trigger the same kinds of responses, right? So, right, okay. So, what another coping mechanism?
When it comes to my kids, I yell at them.
You yell at them.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And yelling in attempt to control? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So yelling will get their attention and get them to do the thing that you want them to do. Correct? Okay. What else?
I become obsessed with controlling the things that I think I have power over, like cleaning out drawers.
Oh, okay. So she says side behaviors that you can control. Or obsessive behaviors. Okay, anyone else? Super interesting, right? So I want you to take, we have cards in the bucket so you can take notes. We're going to just take about 30 seconds and we're just going to ask the Lord to reveal to us what are some of the coping mechanisms that we do when we feel injustice or an offense.
And you can even write on the card what the current injustice or offense is that is coming to your mind at this moment. It might be an offense or an injustice with a spouse. It might be something with work. It might be something in politics or in the economy. It might be something with your kids. It might even be with societal norms. You might be super, super frustrated with the way society does things, and you feel like you don't fit and it's wrong. So that, right? You're like, wow, I was unaware of how much injustice and offense I had in my life. Right? We're going to stir that up. Okay, while you just keep writing on that as the Lord leads you. So in Job's time, when injustice or offense happened, what came out of it often for them was superstitious behaviors. Someone should put that up there, superstitious behaviors. To build a sense of safety. And that's how the entire concept of praying to gods, doing different things in different societies, we all have superstitious behaviors. How many of you can think of a superstitious behavior you have right now? Like, for example, Anne just mentioned hers. Her superstitious behavior is when she feels out of control, she starts participating in the activities she can control.
I wear the same socks every Sunday, and I've never washed them. It helps my batting average.
So not true. The reason I know this isn't true, because you have a superstitious behavior about clean things. And cleanliness. But but excellent. Good try, baby. Okay. Superstitious behaviors are what many of us have participated in, and historically all societies participate in superstitious behaviors in an effort to get safety. So I'm going to put that right here in the middle. Do you have another color? I know! He hates the other color.
Lots of other
Get
colors.
another color, would you please? Thank you, babe. I love you.
The other one.
I know. I changed trash cans on Greg today.
That was not good
It
either.
was not good. Do you have a mic? Oh, you do.
I do, but I'm writing.
Safety. Control. Comfort. Future. And so this is kind of somehow the path that we go down to gain something like this. So Job has just had an experience where every single thing in his life that made his world seem right has just been turned upside down. He has lost his children. He has lost all of his livestock, which, by the way, is like all of your money. Let's just say somebody emptied your bank account, emptied your stock, and took all the money out of your house. That's what that would be. And then also took your job. And didn't I say children already?
Well, let's just
Yeah,
remind them.
remind them again. Lost the children, lost the livelihood and the future of livelihood. Was that it?
And the government collapsed because there's no one else to take care of you back then.
Right. So there's no governmental whatever. So you were known as the wealthiest and one of the most reliable people in the entire, what do you say, East, is what Job was. It's who everybody went to, was Job. And he has now just lost almost everything. He has a wife, and his wife is pretty upset too. She just lost all of her children and everything, and basically she wants to die. And so everything that Job knows has been turned upside down. Because they believe a certain thing, which is, and his friend brought it out, it's Job's 3 friends. His 3 friends are Zophar, Eliphaz, and Bildad. And they come to him and they spend 7 days, right, without saying a word. which is super nice, because I don't know how many of us could go be with a friend who just lost everything and not say a word while they're just like devastated. And this isn't even the end of the story yet. It starts to get worse, which is that Job not only is suffering great loss, he then starts to suffer with illness. So at one point you have the mental capacity to deal with all kinds of tragedy, and then he starts to suffer with illness, which makes it like even worse. And his friends come to him and say, I'm going to see if I can't find this here. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, he says we're going to chapter 4, and we reviewed this a little bit last week, but I'm just going to visit on it again. In chapter 4, he says, "Who can withhold themselves from speaking to you? Surely you have instructed many, and you have strengthened weak hands. Your words have upheld a person who was stumbling, and you have strengthened feeble knees. But now it comes upon you, and you are weary. It touches you, and you are troubled. Is not your reverence and your confidence, the integrity of your ways, your hope? Remember, whoever perished being innocent, and where were the upright ever cut off?" So his friends continue to say, as chapters go on and on, you used to be the person that everyone went to for help and hope. Anybody ever? So what are they saying? What role in the triangle of relationships that people tend to fall into? And that triangle of relationships we'll put right here. We'll just put a little quick triangle. Yeah. So victim, rescuer, and a victimizer. When we are pushed to be unhealthy, this is the mindset that we tend to be in. We are in the mindset which is, it's all my fault. It's the victim. The victimizer, which is, I brought this on myself. These are my choices. I did this, and now I'm reaping the consequences. Or the rescuer. So his friend is saying, you have typically been in our community what? Which of these has Job always been? He's always been the rescuer. But now that he's suffering, he can't handle the role change. Because now how many of you have ever felt that accusation in your life? Right? It's not a comfortable accusation. Right? You switch into something, you experience some misfortune, and what does somebody say to you? They're basically come to you and say, well, you've had it really good most of your life, and now you experience a little bit of suffering, and wah, wah, wah. Isn't that right? It's kind of this crazy little turn of the tables that happens, and there's a theology. And by theology, and I know we're running out of room, but let's just put down at the bottom, theology is what? What's the very definition of theology? Because that's all that Job is about, is theology. So it's really important to know what theology is. Anybody know? Yeah. Okay, set of personal beliefs. You have theos and ology. Theos means God. Ology means study of. Simply put, it's what you think about God. Theology is what you think about God. So schools, I went to a school of theology. And I learned what many people think about God. Many of us were raised, though, in an environment where there was only one way to think about God. Who was raised in that environment? Right? There's only one way to think about God. Here's the way. We're going to teach you what it is. And everyone else who thinks differently is what?
A heretic.
Oh.
Yeah, a heretic. Wrong. Yes. Right? Everyone else is wrong. So theology is what we think about God. So everybody is coming into, every single person, you are, I am, every single person on the planet comes into injustice or offense with a certain theology, what we think about God. It's an automatic response of who we think God is in this situation and who we think we are. And injustice and offense brings out what we deeply think, whether we like it to or not. Right? And then we start to have deeper conversations with God because we can't live with the current theology we have, most of us. And so Job's friends are coming to him and they are saying, you are suffering because you must have done something wrong. because nobody who is perfect is ever cut off. Anyone who is innocent has never experienced anything like this. Now, where do you think they got an idea like that? Yeah, from their faith. The beautiful Jewish people who wrote, it was, I will be your God. If you listen to me, I will take care of you. They got that idea from their faith. And now there's this question being raised, which is this very core of a thing, which is, does a relationship with God rescue you from injustice? Anybody wrestled with that so far? I mean, that's big stuff, right? Does a relationship with God, that's the whole argument. I know, tell me what you're thinking. Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Of course not.
I don't think so.
Okay, why not? That's really, really good. So, hang on, Nikki's going to say. No, it's super good. Go ahead.
I think just life itself would.
Right, life itself would teach you?
Yeah.
Okay. So why is it that people are still believing that a relationship with God should rescue you from all injustice?
I don't know.
Right? And then what does injustice have to do with God? So these are some of the questions that are going to be unwrapped over time, and some of them we're already addressing. Because what Eliphaz then says in the next portion of the chapter is, I had a visitation from something that scared the poo out of me, essentially. He's like, the hair stood back on the back of my neck. I had a visitation from something in the middle of the night. It super, super scared me. And this is what this thing said. Now, most people will quote Job's friends like all the time, right? You'll see a encouraging quote or a corrective quote. Those are my favorite, the corrective quotes. I'm not sure how those get on like journals, the little corrective quotes, that tell you to do a better job or whatever. But anyway, they're often quoted, and nobody ever goes back and says, was that really accurate? Was that really the voice of the Lord? Was it right? So basically, he has a spirit visit him, and now we're starting to get the theology of what demons think about God in this environment, in this cultural context. So this story is like highlighting and bringing out to us what is the nature of the argument that's against us. And it's starting to come out. But it's not told in the story quite that way, but we're giving you kind of a sneak peek. And here's the thing. I heard a voice saying, and we're at verse 17, can a mere mortal be more righteous than God? Can a man be more pure than his maker? Anyone want to answer that?
No.
So the answer is no. Yeah, we're hoping so, right? I'm pretty much hoping that that's true. If he puts no trust in his servants, and he charges his angels with error, how much more than those who dwell in houses of clay? And of course we know that servants and angels in that context means fallen angels and angels in that context. And he says if he doesn't trust them and he charges them with error, angels, then how much more could he trust, or how much could he see as upright are the people who dwell in houses of clay, which we've discussed is what? Who are the people who dwell in houses of clay? Us. Our flesh is considered a dwelling of clay, or a house of clay. We dwell in houses of clay. And our foundation is the dust, because we came from the dust. They are crushed before a moth. They are broken in pieces before morning till evening. They perish with no one regarding them. Does not their own excellence go away? They die without even wisdom. Meaning they die without ever knowing what this is all about. They are super fragile. Are there times in your life where you're like, this feels so true? I feel like I have no wisdom about this situation. I feel like I have no idea what's going on, and I'm never going to really get what really this is all about. I mean, how many people are going around going, if I could only just understand my purpose? That's what this accusation is. You will never ever know the purpose. You will never ever know the point. And how many of us know the point of most of the events in our lives? We don't, right? We go, I don't know what that was all about, and then I moved on. And I don't know what that was all about, and then I moved on, right? So what I'm hoping will happen in this process with Job is that we will unravel a whole bunch of those, I don't know what that was all about, and we will see the redemption of a whole bunch of the injustices and the offenses that we've experienced in life where God wants to turn the tables. So let's go back to, oh, Darby has my phone. What time is it, babe?
Sorry.
That's okay, I just need, yeah.
4:55.
Okay, thanks. So when we get pressed, like Job got pressed, we get pushed over into these. Now let me add a couple of more. We can find ourselves overly defensive. So when we get offended, let's talk about offense instead of injustice for a moment. When we get offended in life, somebody does something that we don't like, somebody doesn't love us as much as we think they should, they don't acknowledge us enough, they don't affirm us enough, they don't do something for us, they don't maybe do the right thing in a situation, they offend us. We know that we're offended when? How do you know when you're offended? What's the hallmark of being offended? Hurt. Excellent. We'll put that up. What else?
Feeling like compulsion to stand up for yourself.
Yes. Okay, so you have a fight mechanism. So defending yourself, feeling compelled. How about kindly teaching them how they got it wrong? So educating the other person, communicating and recommunicating to them. If only I could communicate right, I could help my spouse see ... I know, right? I'm just kidding, you were just clearing your throat for no reason. Anyone else? You know you're offended when?
Just becoming isolated from whatever it is that
Yep, becoming isolated.
Irritated.
Thank you.
Animosity.
There we go. Irritated, animosity, anger. How about hypercritical? When you start to feel hypercritical about someone, it's a huge, glaring sign to let you know that you have an undealt with offense. And if we continue to go down this path, it doesn't really ever work out super well for any of us, does it? Because then you start operating out of this, and then the person becomes the very thing that you have judged them to be. Unkind, uncaring, unlistened, right? Because we're living out of a reality, we almost create that reality between the two of us. It tends to happen. So Job is in a pickle here, because his whole future and everything that makes him feel safe and comfortable and have a future has just gone to pot. And he has all of this happening. And we have all of that happening in our lives. And we kind of shove it to the side and kind of move forward unless God's dealt with some of the hurt and some of the offense and laid some of those things to rest. So, what we have a tendency to do is try to find our role within this triangle with God. And many of us enter into this triangle through what? We're the victim, he's the rescuer. And when you enter into a relationship with God, seeing yourself as a victim, I am sinful, and God has come to rescue me because of things I have done, what does that do? Yeah, it locks you into this pattern, which is really interesting because the path through and the story of Job is breaking this pattern. It's about hitting up against everything that we believe, because if you're a rescuer, what does that force everyone else to be? Yeah, if you are a rescuer, it forces every one of your relationships to be where you're the rescuer and they're a victim or they're a victimizer. You don't allow room or space because this is your identity. It's like you're a hammer, everything's a nail. If you're looking through a lens, I had somebody share with me this week and it was really powerful. She said to me, I have discovered that I am a gateway victim. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, I've discovered that I enter into every relationship and every group of people as a victim. I just see myself as a victim. And she's looking for rescuers. Isn't that interesting? So what do you guys think about you? When you enter a room, when you enter into a space, what do you have a tendency to see yourself as? If you had to pick from 3 bad choices. Because none of us want to admit that any of us really see ourselves as any of these things. But I asked myself this question, and the Lord was very quick to tell me, and I'm not super happy about it. I'm super ashamed, but this is the identity that I tend to see myself as a rescuer. Do you know why? Because this is the identity that gave me this growing up. So whatever it might be, that if you continue to fight for what's right, it may be that being a victimizer is what gave you safety and control growing up. Fighting and defending yourself. It's interesting, isn't it? So God is undoing what we have believed traditionally gives us safety, control, comfort, and a future by undoing all of these superstitious behaviors. And that's what's being gone after here. The subtext of a very legal conversation throughout here is a psychology discourse on what people think about themselves, what they think about God, and what they think about each other, and what the voice of evil has to say. So we have just had very clearly outlined in here that the voice of the friends is kind of the voice of evil. But what's so crazy about the voice of evil is what? It says really good stuff and then slams it right next to another little hook. And doesn't that happen with you? One of my favorite ones was I get up in the morning, maybe Greg and I had an argument the day before or something and it didn't get totally resolved. I wake up in the morning, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. I wake up and here's the thought that comes to my head. Weren't you offended that Greg was kind of insensitive to you yesterday? Okay, that is an evil question. Why? There's no winning with that question. If I say, no, I'm not offended that Greg was insensitive to me, I have just acknowledged that he's insensitive to me, and I am a victim. That question in and of itself starts to put me into a role.